So every year we have those teams that the general consensus of NBA fans and NBA analysts think are going to be contenders. You know, these are teams like the OKC Thunder, the Cleveland Cavaliers, New York Knicks, Denver Nuggets, teams like that. Teams that every year you just hear constantly on TV and on social media that these teams you should be scared about. But personally for me, I'm a fan of that underdog team, the team that nobody talks about, but then defies all odds and overachieves for the year, and sometimes they might win the finals. I mean, we saw it last year with the Pacers. I don't think anybody was talking about the Pacers when playoff time came around. They were talking about the Cavs, they were talking about the Knicks. That Pacers team came into the playoffs, put BTA on every team that they faced, and then took the number one overall team in the entire NBA and general consensus pick for NBA championship last year, the OKC Thunder, to 7 games. And maybe would have won had Halliburton not gotten injured.
Oh my gosh.
So today I want to talk about 4 teams that I have, 2 in the East, 2 in the West, that I think are dark horse sleeper teams this year that I think more people should have their eye on. And before we get started, let me know in the comments what teams you think are going to be dark horse sleeper teams this year. They don't have to be dark horse contenders. They could just be a team that, a lot of people think are going to be really bad, but you think they might compete for a playoff spot. So with that being said, the first team I have that I truly believe is a dark horse contender this year are the Los Angeles Clippers. The Unk Squad, Father Time, is terrified of these guys. So they are the oldest team in the NBA this year on average age. So this is a team that I have heard seriously nobody talking about, but I truly believe that this team can compete for a championship this year. Some people might say, oh, but they're so old, they could all get injured. I think any season, any team could have major injuries that could set them back for the year. So I'm not including any injuries like, oh, but these guys could get injured, so they probably won't be contenders. No, we're going to play this like a casual NBA My GM season, turn injuries off, get those out of there. If every team was fully healthy year round, what teams do I think could compete for a championship? And I genuinely think the Clippers could compete. I think the Clippers have kind of unfortunately been relegated to like an NBA meme status. They've always been little brother of the Lakers. Those years with Kawhi and Paul George, everybody thought they were going to be really good, and they always fell flat to the point to where nobody ever thinks the Clippers are legit anymore. But this is a different team. Playoff poop is gone. When healthy, Kawhi Leonard is a problem. I watched him last year in the playoffs go absolutely nuclear against the Denver Nuggets. James Harden, still a good player. But I think ultimately what sets them over the edge for me are their offseason acquisitions, starting with Bradley Beal. Now, Bradley Beal unfortunately gets memed on like crazy by NBA fans. But Bradley Beal is not a bad player at all. He just had one of the worst contracts in NBA history. No biggie. This dude averaged 17 points per game on Phoenix last year on almost 50% shooting and almost 40% from the three-point line. Bradley Beal is not bad at all. It's just he wasn't as good as his contract said he was. But the Clippers aren't paying him that contract. And so now you get a 17 point per game scorer, whether they want to run him off the bench and start Bogey or switch it around. Either way, you're going to get insane production from him for a fraction of the price that Phoenix was paying him. Like I said, go actually look at his stats on the Suns, and you'll realize they really weren't as bad as everybody thinks. His contract was just absolutely abysmal, but that contract doesn't exist anymore. And so I think Bradley Beal is going to surprise a lot of people this year. Then you have John Collins, who last year averaged 19 points for not the best Jazz team, and he was injured for a lot of the year. But that doesn't change the fact that John Collins has been a solid NBA player for basically his entire career. He's just slept on because he played in Utah, which hasn't been good for a couple years now. And again, he's another guy who I don't know where he fits in the rotation just yet. I've seen the Clippers run starting lineups in practice with Derrick Jones Jr. starting and then John Collins being on the bench squad. Either way, you're going to get insane production from him because in Utah, he had to carry the load next to Lauri Markkanen and still shot over 50%. What's going to happen when he doesn't have to carry the load like that and can just come in and let the offense flow naturally? Then you got Chris Paul, who, yes, is very, very old, but like, this is Chris Paul we're talking about. Like, it doesn't really matter how old he is. He's always going to come out and give you something, and he's going to lead that bench unit, being James Harden's backup. I think the key to a solid bench unit is an elite point guard that can move the ball. And Chris Paul is not elite anymore, but is still a solid NBA backup point guard. Probably, I would say, one of the best backup point guards we have in the league right now. And then the last pickup is Brook Lopez, going to be backing up Ivica Zubac this year. I think that was a huge loss for the Bucks when they lost him in free agency. They got Miles Turner back, but Brook Lopez is still a very serviceable starting center in the NBA, and now he's going to be on the bench squad. You know me. You know how much I love role players. You know how much I think they matter when it comes to competing for a championship. And this Clippers team is about as deep as any NBA team we have this year. Again, the caveat is if they can stay healthy. But if they can stay healthy, this team can compete. All right, so now we're moving over to the East. And the first team I want to talk about are the Atlanta Hawks. The Atlanta Hawks are a team that scare me a lot as a Pistons fan. They made a lot of good moves in the offseason, signing Nos, signing Tingus Pingus. So they have Trae Young, borderline all-star, if not all-star for the last couple of years. Can shoot the hell out of the ball, but also has kind of become one of the best facilitators in the league, if not the best. Dyson Daniel, great barrier thief, proved himself to be one of the most elite defenders in the league last year. Then you have a young and rising Jalen Johnson, who will be a very, very, very solid third option. We'll see how Risa Shea does, and we'll see how Tingus Pingus does. What I like about Risa Shea's situation over in Atlanta is he doesn't have the athleticism or the skills to be like a number one option like we've seen a lot of number one overall picks years before. That draft class was really weak, and there was really nobody that anybody saw being like a generational talent in that draft class. The Hawks don't need him to be the guy. They have guys. So if he can just take another step from what he was last year into a little bit more of an efficient 3-and-D player that they can throw out with that starting squad, that's exactly what they need. And then the last person that I haven't talked about in that starting lineup is Tingus. There's a lot of questions about him that I have personally. First of all, comes with fit. I think a lot of people just look at his last couple years with the Celtics on how good Porzingis really is, and they don't look at his whole career in the years before the Celtics when evaluating what kind of player he is. Because, let's not get it twisted. Like, he was very good for the Celtics and was one of the reasons they were able to get over the hump and win the championship. But before that, he had a couple disappointing stints with teams. He was very solid on the Knicks before he tore his ACL. Then he came back. He was a little bit slower. He didn't have that edge. We saw a little bit of a regression. And then he got traded to the Mavericks. And everybody kind of thought like, whoa, Mavericks are next up. And he was really disappointing for them. Him and Luka did not fit well together. They were not as good as everybody thought they were going to be. So then they shipped him off to Washington, where he was disappointing again. And then he revived his career with the Celtics because the system that they ran fit his game perfectly. The Celtics basically just wanted to go out every night and, have their own little all-star week 3-point competition. They'd let the initiators, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, drive and then kick, and then if the defense would get out of position, they would swing and the defense would have to rotate, eventually ending in a decent 3-point shot. And Porzingis flourished in that system, but the Boston Celtics system is exclusive to the Boston Celtics. It'll be interesting to see if the system that the Hawks run, he can fit in well like he could with the Celtics, or if it's not going to be a match like the Mavericks or like the Wizards. Because Trae Young, yes, he can facilitate, but he is a very ball-dominant guard. He likes to have the ball in his hands a lot, which reminds me of when he played on the Mavericks with Luka, and Luka was a very ball-dominant guard, and Porzingis did not like that. He did not fit well with Luka, and ultimately it ended in him getting shipped off to Washington. And so I just have a lot of questions with Porzingis. And then another one is, that mystery illness he got in the playoffs last year, where he couldn't play much, and then when he did, he just looked really tired, like really slow. And so I think the Hawks are a team that I'm not fully bought in on yet. I want to see over the first month of the season how they progress, but I for sure see the potential there. And if everything works out, I think they are a very scary team in the East. I mean, Trae Young's proved that he can make it to the Eastern Conference Finals basically by himself. And so now that he's got actual quality players around him, we'll see what happens. We're going to stick in the East for our next team, and I'm going to talk about the Orlando Magic. The Orlando Magic are a weird team because they're a team these last 2 years where I've looked at them and I've been like, on paper, yeah, they have the pieces. I mean, this team should be really good in the East, especially with how weak the East has been this last couple years. But it just never works out for them for some reason. Ultimately, I think that comes down to how bad they are at three-point shooting. I mean, utterly atrocious, bottom of the league, I believe. In a league like today where a majority of teams have a larger focus on getting up three-pointers, a team that's like, oh, well, we can't shoot three, so let's just beat them inside, that's not going to work out. And it goes back to the age-old saying, threes are better than twos. I mean, it's just plain and simple. 3 points are more than 2 points. And so that acquisition of Desmond Bane was really good for them. And I think that's the move they needed to make to get over the hump. Bring in a very good three-point shooter to help carry the load with that. They also got Tyus Jones as a solid backup point guard. I don't know what that says for Anthony Black this year. Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, we know about them. I don't need to talk about them very much. 2 elite players, their best 2 players. And then just solid players around. I mean, De Silva, Wendell Carter, Mo Wagner. They drafted Jace Richardson, which so far looks like the steal of the draft. He is killing it in preseason. Again, I'm falling into the trap of this team looks amazing on paper. I felt like this the last 2 years, and they've disappointed both years. But I think this year is different. I think the acquisition of Desmond Bane is going to really help them, along with Tyus Jones as the backup point guard. I mean, don't sleep on Tyus Jones. He is a very solid backup point guard. Again, a very solid backup point guard helps elevate your bench unit, helps all of them play better. And so I could see the Magic being a top 4 seed in the East this year, along, just like the Hawks. I said I wasn't going to include my Pistons, but I do see the Hawks, Magic, and Pistons really fiercely competing for those 3, 4, and 5 spots. And if the Magic are up there, they have a chance to make a deep run in the playoffs. Ultimately, how I see it though, is this is a do or die year for the Orlando Magic. You've had a couple years with a very solid team led by Banchero and Wagner. Jalen Suggs as a very solid third option, but it just hasn't worked out. So you go out and you get Desmond Bane. If this doesn't work out, I think the Magic have to make sweeping changes to probably not Banchero, but probably Wagner or Suggs. Their main weakness last year was their three-point shooting. So they went out and they got a really good three-point shooter to stick in their starting lineup. If they still can't be good, then that's a problem with the already established guys there. And I think Banchero is untouchable, but you have to start looking at how Franz Wagner might fit with Banchero, how Jalen Suggs fits with those two guys, because obviously something's not working. And so I really think this is a do or die year for the Orlando Magic, but I think they do have a solid chance to finish very high up in the East. And if the stars align, make a deep run in the playoffs. All right, going back out west for our last team, we got the San Antonio Spurs. Dude, the Spurs are back. They had a very short stint in NBA irrelevancy, but they are back. Wemby's going to be a top 10 player in the league this year. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Then you get a full year with their last year's pickup in De'Aaron Fox to play alongside Wemby. You already have very solid players that have been in the league for a little bit in Sochan, Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, and then you have a couple savvy vets to help you if you get in the playoffs. Players who have been there, who know how to compete in Harrison Barnes and Luke Cornett. And then you have last year's Rookie of the Year in Stephon Castle and the number 2 overall pick this year in Dylan Harper. I think the Spurs are going to be really good in a stacked Western Conference this year. I think the one thing they could do to set them over the edge and make them an absolute contender this year is to maybe get rid of a couple of their young guards to try and go out and get a bona fide second option. Because I know De'Aaron Fox is good, but he was the second option over in Sacramento, and we kind of saw how that worked out. Obviously Sabonis ain't Wemby. You know, I have questions of whether De'Aaron Fox can be that second option on a NBA Finals team. But you have so many young guards. You have Stephon Castle, you have Dylan Harper now, and you have De'Aaron Fox. You know, there's not enough minutes to go around at the point guard spot for all three of those guys, especially if you want to develop Dylan Harper and Stephon Castle further to be really good players. You know, if I'm a GM and I'm going crazy, I'm looking at either getting rid of one of the two or both of them to get a bona fide star next to Wemby. Because I think if you do that, they still have a lot of competent players around to where, you know, their bench unit won't be utterly gutted like the Lakers. You know, like I said, they still have Sochan, they still have Keldon Johnson, Harrison Barnes, Luke Cornett, Devin Vassell. All these guys are very solid players. And so if you want to get rid of one or two of these young guys, especially guys who you kind of have a surplus at their position, like they do at point guard, to go out and get, like in a mild case, go out and get like a Lauri Markkanen, and in an extreme case, go out and get a guy like Giannis, which I don't think would happen, but would be super fun to see. I think that is what really makes them true absolute contenders in the West to get over these elite teams that we see year in and year out, like the Thunder, like the Nuggets. But at this point, I really just think whatever team Wemby's on is going to make them a contender. Then you tack on De'Aaron Fox as a second option, all those players I've talked about, as well as two very promising young guys in Dylan Harper and Stephon Castle. The Spurs are going to be dangerous this year, and they're going to be a top team in the West, in my opinion. All right, so those are the 4 teams that I have my eye on this year as dark horse sleeper teams, dark horse contenders that I haven't seen a lot of people talk about, but I think could make a deep run in the playoffs with the pieces that they acquired in free agency and in trades this offseason, as well as the already established players that they have on their team. If you guys enjoyed this video, please like. If you guys want to see more content like this, please subscribe, click that bell or whatever. And then, you know, don't forget to let me know in the comments what teams you think are sleeper teams this year. They don't have to be sleeper contenders. They could just be teams that you think are being slept on right now. Like, you think the general NBA fan base may think this team is going to be a bottom team in the East, but you personally think, you know, they could compete for a playoff spot. Just stuff like that. Teams that you think are being slept on, teams that you think are being underrated. Let me know in the comments. Would love to hear and read all of them. But yeah, I mean, that's all I got for today, guys. So with that being said, Peace and love.